Welcome to the world of science fiction stories, and don't forget to like, share and subscribe my channel. Enjoy the listening. Galaxy's apex predators chose Earth. And regretted instantly. The vast emptiness of space hid many dangers, but none as deadly as the Ravagers. For thousands of years, they had traveled from one solar system to another, consuming everything in their path. Countless civilizations had fallen before them. There remains nothing more than footnotes in the Ravagers' long history of conquest. Now, their hungry eyes turned toward a small blue planet called Earth. Captain Drake Miller stared at the monitor in the Earth Defense Force headquarters. The strange energy readings at the edge of the solar system had appeared 3 days ago. At first, everyone thought it might be a new cosmic phenomenon worth studying. Now, Miller wasn't so sure. "Sir, the signature has changed again," said Lieutenant Adams, her face pale in the blue glow of the screen. "It's splitting into smaller patterns, and they're moving toward Earth." Miller leaned forward, his weathered face tightening with concern. "How fast?" "Faster than anything we've ever tracked, sir. Whatever they are, they'll reach our atmosphere in less than 2 days." In a research facility halfway across the world, Dr. Anna Ward peered through her microscope, her red hair falling around her face as she adjusted the focus. What she saw made her breath catch in her throat. "Marcus," she called to her colleague. "You need to see this." Dr. Marcus Bell hurried over, his tall frame casting a shadow over her workstation. "What is it?" "These organisms weren't here yesterday. They're not matching anything in our database, and they're multiplying at an impossible rate." Anna moved aside to let Marcus look through the microscope. Marcus's eyes widened. "These aren't from Earth," he whispered. "We need to alert the authorities immediately." But it was already too late. High above Earth, the first wave of Ravager scout ships entered the atmosphere, invisible to human radar. Supreme Hunter Grill stood on the command deck of the main vessel, his scaled skin glistening under the ship's lights. 6 sharp claws extended from each of his 4 limbs, and his mouth was filled with rows of needle-like teeth. "Begin the hunt," Grill ordered, his voice a deep rumble that vibrated through the ship. "Send the first hunting parties to isolated areas. We will test their defenses before the main feast begins." The Ravagers had conquered worlds far more advanced than Earth. To them, humans were just another form of prey, soft, weak creatures that would fall easily. They had no idea what awaited them. The first attacks happened in remote places: a small fishing village in Alaska, a research station in Antarctica, a mining community in the Australian outback. No survivors were left to tell what happened, just empty buildings and strange marks on the ground. Miller sat in the emergency meeting with world leaders, his uniform crisp despite his lack of sleep. "We've lost contact with 17 locations in the past 24 hours, he reported. "Whatever these things are, they're testing us, looking for weaknesses." "Do we have any images of them?" asked the U.S. president. Miller nodded grimly and pulled up a blurry video on the main screen. "This is from a security camera in the Alaskan village before all communications went down." The video showed shadows moving with impossible speed, tearing through buildings as if they were made of paper. Glimpses of the creatures were brief but terrifying: tall, muscular forms with too many limbs, moving with deadly precision. "My God," someone whispered. "We're dealing with a coordinated attack from an unknown species." Miller continued, "And based on their movement patterns, they're hunting us." "Hunting us?" asked the British Prime Minister. "What do you mean, like cattle?" "Like prey," Miller said grimly. In her lab, Anna worked frantically to understand the alien microorganisms that now filled Earth's atmosphere. They seemed to be collecting data, transmitting it somewhere beyond Earth. "They're scouts," she told Marcus as they examined results. "These microscopic things are studying us, our biology, our weaknesses." Marcus looked up from his computer, his face drained of color. "Anna, I think I know what's happening. These patterns match old legends from various cultures, stories about hunters from the stars who come to feast on worlds." "That's mythology," Anna said, uncertainty creeping into her voice. What if it's not? Marcus turned his screen toward her. Look at these cave paintings from 6 different continents, all thousands of years apart. They show the same thing, tall hunters taking human prey. All the paintings display those same strange markings in the sky we're detecting now. Before Anna could respond, all the lights in the lab went out. Emergency power kicked in seconds later, bathing everything in red light. What's happening? Anna asked, moving closer to Marcus. The answer came as every screen in the lab suddenly turned on by itself, showing the same message across all of them: prepare for harvest. Outside, the sky darkened as massive ships broke through the cloud cover, their hulls reflecting sunlight like polished obsidian. Each was the size of a small city, moving with silent precision as they positioned themselves over major population centers around the world. Communications worldwide began to fail, internet connections dropped, phone signals died, television broadcasts cut out. Humanity was being isolated, cut off from itself. In a small town in the Midwest, people gathered in the streets, looking up at the strange ship hovering above them. No one knew what to do. Some prayed, others tried to flee. But where could they go when the sky itself was filled with threat? A farmer named John looked up, his weathered hand shielding his eyes from the sun. What do they want? He asked, no one in particular. As if in answer, the bottom of the ship opened, and dark shapes began to descend toward the town. The first Ravager hunting party had arrived on Earth. In their command ship, Grill received the initial reports with satisfaction. The prey on this world is plentiful and seemingly helpless, his second-in-command said. Begin building the processing facilities in the area these humans call the Rockies, Grill ordered. It's remote enough for our work to proceed undisturbed. Little did the Ravagers know that humanity had faced threats before, not from the stars, perhaps, but threats nonetheless, and through every challenge, humans had shown one quality above all others: they refused to go quietly into the night. As Miller gathered his forces and scientists like Anna and Marcus raced to understand the enemy, the battle for Earth was just beginning. The Ravagers thought they'd found their next feast. They were about to learn how wrong they were. The Rocky Mountains stood silent and majestic as they had for millions of years. Now, hidden among their peaks, something alien grew. The Ravagers had chosen this remote location for their main processing facility, a massive structure that rose like a dark tumor from the mountainside. Black spires reached toward the sky, and strange lights pulsed from within. Supreme Hunter Grill walked through the nearly completed facility, his clawed feet clicking against the metal floor. Around him, lesser Ravagers worked tirelessly, setting up machines designed to process human bodies into food and resources. Construction proceeds well, said his lieutenant, Bohr. We will be ready for full harvest within 2 days. Grill made a sound that might have been a laugh. The prey on this world is so easy, they hide in their dwellings, waiting for us to come. I expected more of a challenge. There are reports of some resistance in the larger settlements, Bohr noted. Some prey have weapons, primitive tools. Grill dismissed the concern with a wave of his clawed hand. They merely make the hunt more interesting. 20 meters away, Marine Sergeant Tom Jackson and his 5-person squad moved carefully through the forest. They'd been on a training exercise when the invasion began, and their base had gone silent shortly afterward. Now, they were trying to figure out what was happening. Satellite phones were still down. Those ships are still up there, Corporal Martinez said, looking at the sky through a gap in the trees. But I haven't seen any more come down in the last few hours. Jackson, a veteran of 3 combat tours, felt something he rarely did: genuine fear. But he pushed it down. His squad needed him to be strong. We keep moving northwest, he decided. There's a ranger station about 10 miles from here, maybe someone there knows what's going on. What they didn't know was they were heading straight toward a Ravager hunting party. The aliens moved through the forest with practiced skill. They were hunters by nature, predators who had evolved to track and kill their quarry. Their leader, a Ravager named KF, stopped suddenly, lifting his head to scent the air. Prey moving this way, he hissed to his 4 companions. The Ravagers spread out, preparing an ambush. They had done this countless times on countless worlds. It was always the same, quick, efficient killing followed by bringing the bodies back for processing. They expected nothing different here. Jackson felt the hairs on the back of his neck stand up. The forest had gone too quiet. "Weapons ready," he whispered to his squad. "Something's coming." The first Ravager leaped from behind a large tree, moving faster than any human could. But Jackson had spent years honing his instincts. He fired 3 shots before the creature reached him. The bullets hit the Ravager in the chest. It staggered, green fluid leaking from its wounds. It looked down in what could only be described as shock before collapsing. The forest erupted into chaos as Ravagers attacked from all sides, their claws slashing through the air. The Marines fought back with everything they had. Private Cooper emptied her rifle into an approaching Ravager. It fell just feet away from her. Corporal Martinez wasn't as lucky. A Ravager's claws ripped through his armor, and he went down with a cry of pain. "Fall back!" Jackson shouted, firing as he moved to a defensive position by the rocks. The squad retreated to a cluster of boulders, using them as cover. 3 of the 5 Ravagers were down, but the remaining 2 pressed the attack, moving with unnatural speed. Jackson grabbed a grenade from his belt. "Cooper, when I throw this, you and Singh run left. Jones, you go right with Martinez, I'll cover." He pulled the pin and threw it. The explosion echoed through the forest. Using the distraction, the Marines split as planned. Jackson caught a glimpse of one Ravager pursuing Cooper and Singh. He aimed carefully and put 2 bullets into the back of its head. The creature fell mid-leap. The last Ravager, Kreth, realized it was alone for the first time in its life. It felt something new, uncertainty. These prey fought back with unexpected skill. It decided to retreat and report to Grill. But as it turned to run, Jones appeared from behind a tree and emptied his rifle into the creature. The Ravager fell, twitching, to the forest floor. For a moment, everything was quiet except for the heavy breathing of the Marines. "Did we get them all?" Singh asked, her voice shaking. Jackson nodded, approaching one of the fallen creatures cautiously. "Yeah, but Martinez needs medical attention, now." As they treated their wounded comrade, they examined the aliens they had killed. Nothing about them seemed familiar, not their tough scaled skin, not their multiple rows of teeth, not the strange devices they carried. "What are these things?" Cooper asked, nudging one with her boot. Jackson replied, "I don't know, but they bleed. And if they bleed, we can kill them." What the Marines didn't realize was that a small device on each Ravager was still transmitting back at the processing facility. Grill received the signal with disbelief. "A hunting party destroyed?" He growled, "Impossible." Vor checked the data again. "The signals are clear, Supreme Hunter, all 5 hunters in the party have fallen." Grill slammed his clawed fist into a nearby console, denting the metal. "No prey species has ever killed one of us. Find who did this and bring them to me." Within hours, a larger Ravager force surrounded Jackson and his squad. Despite fighting bravely, the humans were eventually captured. Their weapons were confiscated. They were brought to the processing facility, where Grill waited. Unlike other captured humans, who were sent directly to processing, these 5 were taken to a special holding cell. Grill approached the transparent barrier separating him from the humans and studied them with his large vertical pupilled eyes. "You killed my hunters," he said, his voice translated through a device around his neck. "No prey has ever done that before." Jackson stared back defiantly. "We're not prey." Grill made that strange laughing sound. "Everything is prey to the Ravagers. But you are different. I want to understand why before you are consumed." Meanwhile, back at her lab, Dr. Anna Ward made a crucial discovery. The alien microorganisms had a unique chemical signature, one that seemed to respond to specific pheromones. "Marcus," she called excitedly. Dr. Bell hurried over, looking at her findings. "A communication system based on chemical signals," he said. They don't just use sound or light, they use scent, complex compounds that carry information. We might be able to disrupt their communication. As they worked on developing a compound that could interfere with the Ravagers' chemical language, Captain Miller organized what remained of Earth's military forces into a resistance. In the Ravager facility, Jackson and his squad learned everything they could about their captors, determined to find a weakness. The Predators thought humans were easy prey. They were about to learn that on Earth, the line between predator and prey wasn't so clear. Captain Drake Miller stood before a wall of screens in the makeshift command center. It had been 2 weeks since the Ravagers arrived, 2 weeks of fighting, hiding, and desperate planning. The room was filled with military leaders from around the world, all connected through secure channels that the Earth Defense Force had managed to keep working. They've established control centers on every continent, Miller said, pointing to red dots on the global map. But they're not just destroying everything, they're setting up processing facilities. They're farming us like cattle. Exactly, the Russian general said, his face grim from one of the screens. That's also their weakness, Miller agreed. They want to harvest us, not wipe us out completely. That gives us time. We've had some success with conventional weapons, they can be killed, a British admiral spoke up. Yes, Miller nodded. But at a high cost. We need to be smarter than that. We need to understand what we're fighting. He brought up new images on the main screen, close-up shots of Ravager technology and biology, taken by brave scouts and surviving scientific teams. They communicate using pheromone signals as well as sound, another officer noted. They have a hierarchical structure, with larger ones giving orders to smaller ones, and they all seem to report to regional commanders, like Grill. Similar, but not exactly, Miller replied. There's individual thought, but also a strong collective component. And we've noticed something else, they're struggling to predict our movements. In the Rocky Mountain Processing Facility, Supreme Hunter Grill watched with fascination as the human called Jackson exercised in his cell. Despite being captured, the human maintained a routine, keeping his body strong. Why do you do this? Grill asked through the translator. You will be consumed regardless. Jackson didn't stop his push UPS. As long as I'm breathing, I'm fighting. This concept puzzled Grill. In all his centuries of hunting across the stars, he had never encountered prey that refused to accept its fate. Most species, once captured, surrender to despair. Your kind is strange, Grill observed. You fight even when there is no hope of victory. You've never met humans before, Jackson replied with a cold smile. In her underground lab, Dr. Anna Ward carefully mixed chemicals, her hands steady despite exhaustion. Beside her, Dr. Marcus Bell monitored the reaction on a computer screen. The compound is stable, he reported. But will it work? Anna nodded, sealing the mixture in a container. Tests on Ravager tissue samples show it disrupts their ability to process pheromone signals. It won't kill them, but it will confuse them, make it harder for them to coordinate. How do we deploy it? Marcus asked. That's the hard part, Anna admitted. It needs to be released inside their command structures. Someone has to get inside. At that moment, Captain Miller entered the lab with a team of Special Forces soldiers. Dr. Ward, Dr. Bell, he greeted. I hear you've developed something that might give us an edge. Anna explained the compound and its effects. Miller listened carefully, then nodded. We've received intelligence about the facility where they're holding Sergeant Jackson and his squad. We're planning a rescue mission. If we can get your compound into that facility, it could disrupt their entire regional command. It's extremely risky, Marcus warned. The facility will be heavily guarded. Miller's face hardened. Everything is risky now, but we need Jackson. He spent more time observing these creatures up close than anyone else. And if we can deploy your compound at the same time, we might just turn the tide. The plan took shape quickly. A small team would infiltrate the Ravager facility, rescue Jackson and his squad, and plant Anna's compound in the ventilation system. As preparations continued, Grill reported his findings to the Ravager hive mind, a collective consciousness formed by the eldest and most powerful Ravagers who remained on their home world. "These humans are unlike any prey we have encountered," Grill communicated through a special device. "They continue to resist despite overwhelming odds, they adapt quickly to our tactics." "Explain," came the cold collective voice of the hive mind. "They are individualistic, yet they coordinate effectively. Each seems capable of independent decision-making, yet they form cohesive groups. It makes their behavior difficult to predict." The hive mind was silent for a moment, processing this information. "This is concerning, but not alarming," it finally decreed. "Continue the harvest." But Grill wasn't so certain anymore. Something about these humans troubled him, they didn't behave like prey should. His thoughts were interrupted by an alarm, the facility's outer defenses had been breached. Miller's strike team moved with precision through the Ravager facility. They had studied drone recon footage and knew exactly where to go. They wore suits designed to mask their scent, making them harder for the Ravagers to detect. That the team split into two groups, one headed for the detention area, the other for the ventilation control room. In the cell block, Jackson looked up as the lights in the corridor flickered. Something was happening, he signaled to his squad, who immediately moved into practice positions. When the door to their cell block suddenly opened, they were ready. 3 Ravager guards rushed in, only to be met by organized resistance. The Marines used improvised weapons crafted from items in their cells. In the confusion, Miller's team arrived, eliminating the remaining guards and freeing Jackson and his squad. "Took you long enough," Jackson greeted Miller with a grim smile. "Had to wait for the right moment," Miller replied, handing Jackson a weapon. "Now let's move, we've got 5 minutes before this place is swarming with hostiles." Meanwhile, the second team reached the ventilation control room. They quickly overpowered the single Ravager technician and began installing Anna's compound into the air system. "Dispersion in 30 seconds, the team leader reported over the radio. As they regrouped and fought their way back to the extraction point, the compound began to spread throughout the facility. The effect was almost immediate. Ravagers moved erratically, unable to coordinate. Some turned on their own kind. Grill felt it too, a sudden inability to sense the chemical signals that helped him command his forces. It was like losing a sense he had relied on his entire life. For the first time, he felt fear. The human rescue team escaped with Jackson and his squad, leaving behind a facility in chaos. As they boarded the stealth helicopters waiting to extract them, Jackson looked back at the Ravager structure. "They're not invincible," he said quietly. "No, they're not," Miller agreed. "And now we know a lot more about them, thanks to you." "They have a collective mind," Jackson explained. "Not completely like a hive, each has individual thoughts, but they're connected somehow. And that connection is what makes them strong, and what makes us strong." Miller asked. Jackson thought for a moment. "Our unpredictability, our individuality, the very thing they can't understand about us." As Dr. Ward's compound continued to spread through the Ravager command structure, disrupting their ability to coordinate, humanity began to fight back with renewed hope. The predators from the stars were learning a harsh lesson on Earth. Humans were apex predators too, and they would not go quietly into the night. The rescue mission had not been without cost. Of the 12 soldiers in Miller's strike team, only 7 made it back alive. They were given a hero's welcome at the underground base, but there was little time for celebration. The war against the Ravagers was entering a new phase. Sergeant Tom Jackson sat in the briefing room, still wearing the same clothes he'd been given in captivity. His face was thinner, his eyes harder, but his spirit remained unbroken. "Tell us everything you learned," Miller said. "Every detail matters." Jackson nodded, gathering his thoughts. "They're organized like an army, but they think like a single organism. The big one, Grill, he's in charge of this region. But he answers to something they call the hive mind." He described the Ravager facility in detail, their technology, their weapons, their strange biology. Most importantly, he explained their weaknesses. They relied on chemical signals for complex coordination, and when they couldn't use them, they were confused, disorganized, and not used to resistance. Dr. Ward, who had been listening intently, spoke up. The compound we used was just a prototype. With what you've told us, we can make it much more effective. How soon? Miller asked. A few days, maybe less, she replied. But we'll need to produce it in much larger quantities. Miller turned to the map spread across the table. Their command structures are worldwide now, we'll need to coordinate attacks on all of them simultaneously. The people are already fighting back, Colonel Riaz said, representing the Mexican military. Not just soldiers, ordinary citizens too. They're using guerrilla tactics, hitting the Ravagers, then disappearing. Miller nodded. We need to arm them with Dr. Ward's compound, and we need to start adapting Ravager technology to use against them. Jackson leaned forward. Their weapons can be operated by humans, I watched them use them. The design is strange, but not impossible to figure out. A plan began to take shape, a global counterattack that would hit the Ravagers where they were most vulnerable. Meanwhile, Supreme Hunter Grill faced the wrath of the hive mind. You have allowed prey to infiltrate your command center, the collective voice accused. You have failed to maintain control. These humans are unlike any prey we have encountered before, Grill pleaded. They adapt quickly, they learn our weaknesses. Excuses, the hive mind hissed. If you cannot control this world, we will send the Dvorer to complete the harvest. Grill's entire body tensed. The Dvorer was the Ravager's ultimate weapon, used only when a world proved exceptionally difficult to harvest. It was massive, powerful, and utterly merciless. Give me more time, Grill begged. I will crush their resistance. You have 3 cycles, the hive mind decreed. After that, the Dvorer comes to Earth. Humans were beginning to fight back with increasing effectiveness. Dr. Ward's compound was being manufactured in secret facilities and distributed to resistance fighters worldwide. Scientists and engineers worked day and night to understand and adapt Ravager technology. In what had once been a car factory in Detroit, Jackson watched as workers retooled assembly lines to produce weapons based on Ravager designs. Will they work? He asked the lead engineer, Lisa, who had once designed racing cars. We've tested the prototypes, she said, her face smudged with grease. They're not as powerful as the originals, but they'll hurt those monsters. Similar scenes played out around the world, humanity doing what it had always done in the face of overwhelming threats, adapting, innovating, refusing to give up. Miller coordinated it all from the underground command center. Communication between resistance groups was difficult, with the Ravagers controlling most satellite and transmission systems, but they managed using old technologies, radio, Morse code, even human messengers when necessary. Reports show Ravager confusion is spreading, a communications officer reported. The compound is working, they're having trouble coordinating their forces. Miller allowed himself a small smile. Good. Tell all groups to prepare for Phase 2. Phase 2 was the direct assault on Ravager processing facilities. It was risky but necessary. As long as those facilities operated, humans would continue to be harvested. The attack on Grill's Rocky Mountain facility was led by Jackson himself. A force of 300 fighters, a mix of military personnel and civilians who had learned to fight, approached under the cover of darkness, carrying both human and adapted Ravager weapons. Remember, Jackson told them before they moved out, they're strong and fast, but they're confused. They can't coordinate like they used to. Hit them hard, and don't give them time to regroup. The battle was fierce. Ravagers fought with natural ferocity, their claws and teeth as dangerous as their advanced weapons. But the humans fought with something the Ravagers couldn't understand, desperate courage, the will to protect their world and each other. Lisa's adapted weapons proved effective, tearing through Ravager armor. Dr. Ward's compound, now in its 3rd and most potent version, was deployed throughout the facility, causing chaos in the Ravager ranks. Jackson fought his way to the central command room, where he knew Grill would be. He had a score to settle with the Supreme Hunter. When he finally broke through, he found Grill waiting, holding a weapon that hummed with strange energy. "You," the Ravager growled, "the prey that fights back." Jackson raised his modified Ravager rifle. "I told you we weren't prey." Grill fired an energy beam that narrowly missed Jackson as he dove for cover. The battle between them was brutal, each landing blows that would have killed a lesser opponent. Finally, Jackson got the opening he needed. As Grill prepared to fire again, Jackson threw a grenade containing the latest version of Dr. Ward's compound at the Ravager's feet. It exploded in a cloud of chemicals that engulfed Grill. The effect was immediate. The Supreme Hunter staggered, dropping his weapon as the compound overloaded his sensory system. Jackson didn't hesitate, he fired 3 shots directly into Grill's chest. As the Supreme Hunter fell, Jackson activated his radio. "Command Center, leader is down." Similar reports began coming in worldwide. The coordinated attack had worked better than anyone had dared hope. Ravager facilities were falling, their forces in disarray without their chemical communication system. But even as humanity celebrated these victories, the hive mind made its decision. The 3 cycles had not yet passed, but the situation was deteriorating too quickly. "Send the Dvorer," the collective consciousness commanded. "This world requires special attention." In deep space, a massive ship larger than any that had come before changed course and accelerated toward Earth. Inside was the most terrifying weapon in the Ravager arsenal, a creature bred for millennia to be the perfect destroyer of worlds. As Miller received reports of victories around the globe, a scientist from the astronomical division rushed in with alarming news. "Captain, we've detected something massive approaching Earth. It's bigger than anything we've seen before." Miller looked at the data, his momentary elation fading. "Get me Dr. Ward and Sergeant Jackson, the real battle is just beginning." Humanity had won significant victories, turning the tide against the Ravagers, but the ultimate test was still to come. The massive view screen in the command center showed an object moving toward Earth. It dwarfed all previous Ravager ships, appearing on radar as a dark mass larger than a small city. "The Dvorer," Jackson said quietly. "Grill mentioned it before he died. It's their ultimate weapon, sent only when a world proves too difficult to harvest." Captain Miller studied the projected path. 3 days until it reaches Earth. That's all the time we have. For the first time since the invasion began, representatives from every surviving government gathered in the underground command center, humanity's last hope. Military leaders, scientists, and civilian authorities all faced the same grim reality. Despite recent victories, Earth now faced an even greater threat. "What exactly is this Dvorer?" asked the Brazilian president, her face lined with exhaustion. Dr. Ward pulled up images taken from long-range telescopes. "Based on what we can see, and what Sergeant Jackson learned, it's both a ship and a creature. The Ravagers bred it specifically for consuming difficult worlds. It can absorb and process entire ecosystems. How do we stop something like that?" The question hung in the air, heavy with desperation. Miller stepped forward. "We have 3 days to prepare, 3 days to unite all our resources, all our knowledge, all our resolve.